Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. Today, I wanted to talk about if people were bad in life, and it could even be our relatives, could they come back as a spirit and make our lives miserable? Will their energy on earth taint us if they're a spirit? And I really was thinking about this question, and I thought, you know what? That's a really good question. So I wanted to address it because basically, there's a lot of people that didn't, where they just weren't happy. They didn't give us some really good energy. Those energy vampires, as we call them. And sometimes we'll have even parents that we didn't get along with, and they just sucked the energy bone dry from us. Or you have a sibling that was like that. And you kind of wonder when they pass, am I going to get stuck with their bad energy? Well, it's interesting because I had a grandmother that passed, and I wasn't particularly close to her in life because my grandmother had a lot of issues. And I did feel bad for her, but all the same, I just didn't like her as a human being. I'm not going to lie to you. And no matter how much you want to see the good in people, some people just don't bring good. Long story short, she had passed. And interesting enough, after her funeral, about a couple of days later, I had gotten these new couches. And I remember, and I did a no-no, I was eating on my couch. And I was eating some pasta. Wrong thing to do, but I did it. But I'm usually very careful and neat. But anyway, as I was eating it, my grandmother appears, and I was totally shocked in seeing her. So, of course, the bowl of pasta and the red sauce went all over my beautiful new couch. And I was so upset and I was frazzled. And right away, my grandmother now disappeared, and I'm trying to get this cleaned up. And at the time, my mother was staying with me, and she says, "What happened?" And I didn't tell my mother. And I just said, "Oh, I just lost control of my fork and I spilled it." She goes, "Oh, honey, I don't know how you're going to get this out. I hope it comes out." I go, "Me too." So I remember, taking the Resolve and trying to clean it and just doing it, just rubbing it. And my mother said to me, "Listen, stop rubbing it because you're going to ruin it. I can see the texture in the fabric. It's changing." I go, "I just can't believe I did this." And she goes, "Honey, just don't worry about it. We'll see when it dries." The next morning I got up, and not only was the stain completely gone, but so was the texture in the fabric. Like a new couch, the way it was delivered. So thank goodness my mother was there because my mother goes, "How did it turn out?" I go, "You tell me." She looks at the couch and she says, "Oh my God." She says, "There's nothing on it. Like you didn't even spill it." I says, "I know." So time goes by, and my grandmother was trying to show herself to me. And it took about another 4 or 5 days. I don't remember the exact day, but it was within the week. And she came through. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I need to make my peace with you." Now that's really going to be a tough one because I didn't like her as a human being. And I thought, well, I just thought, just go up there through that light and just go. But you know what? She didn't. So was she earthbound? You betcha she was. Interesting enough, as time went by, I started to learn and get to know my grandmother in a whole new light. And I started to see things that she struggled with in life that she was explaining to me. And it was the most profound experience that I ever had. And I actually started to like her. I'm of Greek descent, and I'm 100% Greek. My grandmother obviously was Greek, and she would talk Greek to me. My Greek never got better. Okay? So to make a long story short, it took my grandmother 2 years before she exited. And I got to know my grandmother in such a profound way that I only wish she was like that in life. She did have a lot, and the way she handled things was not great either. But remember, I always say, when you go through that light, or you pass, you start to see things differently. Well, it turned out she did go through that light. She wasn't earthbound like I thought she was. And I said to her, why are you here? And she said, because I want to make things right. And I know you can see me, but I needed to set the record straight for you to understand my life. Not that I'm making any excuses for my behavior. So I remember calling a dear friend of mine who was a priest, and I said, what do you do with something like that? Because it was very hard for me to make my peace. And he said, you're going to have to make your peace somehow because you're going to help set her soul free. And I says, wow, that's a big one, because you can't command respect and you can't command peace. This is something that we all struggle with, and it's a very hard thing. But I got the gift of enlightenment with her because through time, she started to show me and explain what she was about. And I remember telling my mother she was actually quite humorous. And she goes, she was when she was in a great mood, but she had a lot of funny quirks to her. I had a very intelligent grandmother. And there was a lot that I never got to know that she didn't really show people. Long story short, it took 2 years that she was in my home. And to tell you the truth, she became such a profound spirit guide to me. Profound. And like I said, I started to get to know her in a way that I never knew her in life. And the day that she came, she said to me, it's time for me to go. And believe it or not, I was actually sad to see her go. But I understood it. And I wish God to bless her spirit and soul and bestow God's richest blessings always to her. And she did leave. And it was just an amazing experience to be able to let go and make my peace with her. Now, was she not a nice person in life? She wasn't. She really wasn't. But I always say when I do readings, and spirit will come through that maybe weren't nice to their daughter-in-laws or their children or their spouses, I actually hear what they have to say, and they want them to know how sorry they are. Not that it may make a difference, but it's good to know and it's good to hear, and I pass those messages. Not every spirit comes in that way, but for the ones that have remorse, I am very happy for their soul because their soul is growing, because they're starting to acknowledge the difference and knowing that they weren't very kind on earth and they want to make amends. And the first thing to soul growth is doing that and doing the work. So the answer to the question, if people gave us trouble in life, will their energy be bad as a spirit? I'm going to say no. The only times that they can be bad as a spirit is if they remain earthbound, because they are their same insufficient, crummy, evil self. Okay? But once they go through that light, they start to know the difference. And at first, when my grandmother came through, I actually thought that she was earthbound, and it wasn't until I kept seeing her and I started to understand that she was nothing of good and kindness and wanted to set the record straight. So thank you to my grandmother. She's been my biggest supporter spiritually. She came to me the other day because when I do my readings, I go without eating because when I eat, it makes me tired. And I wasn't feeling good. And that night when I went to bed, I had terrible chest pains, and I thought, oh, I wonder what's going on. And I thought I was having a heart attack, to be honest with you. And I thought, okay, if this is it, then it's my time, because I kept seeing my grandmother come. And she's showing me this beautiful meal, and she's gorging on eating. And I thought, that's an odd thing for me to see. So it wasn't until the next day I'm going to the doctor, and she comes at me in front of the windshield on the expressway, and she said, you need to eat, she says to me. And I said, oh, and here I thought I was going to die. Thank you. So she continues to be such a beautiful, enlightening spirit guide to me, and I'm always grateful to her. So something that wasn't so great in life turned out to be so grand in the afterlife. I thank God for all the chances that God gives each and every one of us and what we do with these magnificent changes. So the next time when you think about somebody who caused you great pain in life, sometimes they become our biggest advocates spiritually and become that beautiful spirit guide that guides us and protects us. So I hope this has enlightened you, and I hope it's given you food for thought in how to see sometimes not so nice people, and hopefully that their spirits can heal and come back, whether they visit us in a dream or they come through in a reading when you're in a session with a psychic medium. However you get these messages, pay attention to them. They are real. They always are. So think peace, because I myself had to learn to make peace with my grandmother's spirit as a human being on this earth. And it took me time. Like I said, it took me about 2 years to do it. And it did. But I'm glad that I worked at it. Just as she was working on her soul growth as a spirit, I was working on my soul growth as a human being. So I hope this has enlightened you. Until next time, try to think outside the box and try to be more understanding, even if somebody isn't so nice. And maybe one day we'll be lucky enough to see them in our dreams, or see them in front of us, or go to a psychic medium and they're going to be able to translate the messages. Any way you get them, take it. Okay? Until next time, please subscribe to YouTube, my Psychic Medium Facebook, and you're sure to get even a lot more that'll give us a lot to think about. Until then, all the best. Love you always. Bye-bye.